I think we'll get going. We'll call the regular meeting of Township Council for the purposes of a public hearing to order. It's going to begin by acknowledging the traditional territories of the Coast Salish peoples, and in particular, acknowledge our special relationships with the Kaitsi, Kwantlen, and Matsqui First Nations. So with that, get a motion. I guess you want to go ahead, Ms. Bauer, and read the preamble?
A public hearing is a statutory requirement under Section 464 of the Local Government Act and must be held prior to third reading of a community plan, land use contract amending heritage bylaw designation, or heritage revitalization agreement. During a public hearing, council acts as a quasi-judicial role for the purpose of allowing persons who believe their interest in property is affected by the bylaw, permit, or other matter to make representations to council, either orally or by written submission, or to add comments or elaborate on correspondence that they may have already been presented to council concerning the bylaws. It is important to note that council is not in a position to receive any additional information on the bylaws following the public hearing as dictated by case law. The hearing procedure involves an explanation from the Community Development Division on the purpose of the proposed bylaw and to hear from individuals regarding the bylaws. In order to ensure that all interested parties have a reasonable opportunity to be heard, speakers are requested to keep representations as brief and succinct as possible and no longer than 5 minutes, excluding time required for questions from council. Speakers will be asked to state their name, neighborhood, and city for the record, and if referring to prepared remarks, to submit the copies of these to the township clerk. Decorum must be maintained at all times. This includes refraining from applause, booing, or heckling. To assist with large numbers of speakers, individuals must advise the township clerk and sign the speakers list prior to the commencement of the public hearing. The names on the speakers list will be read out loud during the hearing. Individuals who have already addressed council and wish to add further submissions will wait until the people have not yet addressed council have had the opportunity to speak. All submissions and speakers list are considered part of the public record. Council members should not express their views nor debate the bylaws, but may question speakers to clarify particular points in the submissions. Council may consider third reading and final adoption at this meeting or at its next regular meeting to be held on Monday, April 17th, 2023, in this room.
Great. So get an adoption and receipt of agenda item. Get a motion, please. Moved by Councillor Pratt, seconded by Councillor Martins. Any discussion on the agenda? Seeing none, show of hands. All in favor? Anyone opposed? That carries unanimously. Mr. Richardson, we'll move on with C1.
Thank you, Worship. Item C1 is election and political signs bylaw. I'll yield the floor to my colleague, Ms. Bauer, to provide comment.
Council requested a public input opportunity for the procedure, the election and local signs bylaw. We currently have one speaker on the speakers list, Britt Gardner.
Great, thank you. Please come forward. Good to see you again.
Thank you for the opportunity to address you today regarding the proposed election sign bylaw. My name is Britt Gardner and I'm a resident of Fort Langley. Like all of you, I ran in the 2022 municipal election and participated in the so-called necessary evil of erecting election signs. I was initially pleased to hear about a bylaw proposal to eliminate these signs. However, the proposal exempts private property, creating an unfair advantage for certain individuals and interest groups. My intention is to critically analyze the proposed bylaw and suggest an alternative solution for a more equitable and fair approach to election sign regulation in the Township of Langley. My hope is that after careful consideration of the issues raised, that Council will reject the proposed bylaw in its current form. First, the proposed bylaw favors private landowners by restricting election signs to private property, where an unlimited number can be displayed. This may skew election campaigns and political discourse in favor of candidates with established connections to large property owners, while disadvantaging residents without such access. The proposed bylaw may also lead to unequal representation of candidates and their messages, as private landowners may support specific candidates or ideologies, creating an imbalanced visual landscape of election signs. This imbalance could unduly influence public opinion and undermine the democratic process. Our local government has been frequently criticized for being vulnerable to capture by private interests and land speculators. Private property along major roadways and high traffic areas, typically the highest value property in the township, is controlled by a select few. By allowing only private properties the option to erect unlimited signage, we unduly privilege the owners of large parcels and their interests in advertising for their preferred candidates. During the last political campaign, our now mayor took advantage of his commercial land holdings in the downtown core of Fort Langley to display large campaign signage for himself and his team of candidates. No other candidates could advertise in downtown Fort Langley without permission from privileged landowners such as our mayor. I ask this council to consider whose interests are prioritized when election signage is restricted to only private property and whether a conflict exists. Second, the rationale for banning signs has been to eliminate visual clutter and waste from our community. I agree with this reasoning. However, the rationale for excluding private property is unclear. We have explicit authority in both the Community Charter and Local Government Act to regulate and restrict all signage on both public and private property, and we should do so fairly and equitably while protecting the public interest. If council has concerns that including private property in this bylaw would limit free expression, I ask you, whose expression? By banning this so-called free expression from public spaces and limiting it only to private ones, we privilege private interests while marginalizing those without access to public-facing property. We should not assume that our neighboring municipalities have the right approach either. How might we eliminate campaign sign clutter and waste while ensuring free and fair expression during a public election while promoting greater awareness of campaigns? First, we can eliminate waste and roadside clutter fairly and equitably by applying uniform campaign sign restrictions to all properties within the township, both public and private. Like France, we could enact outright elimination of campaign signage in conjunction with creating public zones where each candidate is allotted designated space to display information. Second, the townships should increase its budget to promote local elections more aggressively and provide more opportunities for candidates to inform the public of their platforms and messaging. This might include improving the township's own election website and candidate profiles, further educational resources, running general online advertisements, and increasing general election marketing materials displayed in public spaces. In conclusion, in light of the deficiencies and inequities created by an unequal ban on campaign signs, I urge council to reject the bylaw in its current form or refer it back to staff for further consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. For item C1, is there any other submissions from the public? For a second time, is there any other submissions from the public for item C1? Public input opportunity. And for a third time, is there any submissions from the public? Seeing none, so we'll informally close that, Mr. Richardson. No explanation from the proponent is obviously required. I think we have that in the staff report. So I'm going to see if there's a motion to grant this first, second, and third reading. Because this was not granted first, second, and third reading. It was referred for public input. Does anybody wish to move first, second, and third reading? Moved by Councillor Bailey. Is there a seconder to that? Seconded by Councillor Rent. Is there any speakers? Councillor Martins, go ahead.
Yeah, I'd like to move an amendment to this.
What's your amendment?
Do you want me to go ahead with the wording?
Yeah, just what's the scope of it?
Basically rewording a 7.4
Okay, it's regarding
of the bylaw with regards
referencing
to the reference.
violation.
That's right.
Pretty minor then. Yeah, you go ahead and just make that amendment.
Sure. Okay, so.
To move the amendment, I'll get a seconder for it.
Oh, okay. I'd like to move amendment to amend 7.4 to better reflect the legislation.
Are you clear on what that is, Ms. Bauer? Or you think you maybe were provided a copy with it potentially?
Yes, would you like me to repeat it?
Yes, please. Is there a second? Maybe read the motion and then we'll get a second.
Okay.
Thank you.
The amending motion says to reword 7.4 to defacing, damaging, pulling down, or removing election or political signs is an offence and subject to enforcement under the Canadian Elections Act and or the Criminal Code of Canada.
Is there a seconder to that? Seconded by Councillor Van Popte. Do you wish to speak more to it?
No.
No, you're good. Is there any more discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, call the question on the amendment. That carries unanimously with Councillor Richter absent. So back to the main motion as amended. Do you have anything else, Councillor Martins? No? Councillor Pratt.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. And this is a challenging one for me. I'm I'm a renter. I have no pretensions to owning anything anytime soon. I don't have a wide connection of people who do own land. And so outright banning it on public property severely limits me. And I know the funny conversation we've always had, or has always been had at council, is that banning election signage would unfairly benefit incumbents. And now I'm there. But at the same token, it would probably hurt me a little bit as well. So I would like to see an amendment where we potentially allow certain public right-of-ways or roads or specific instances where we would allow signage on public property. I think I know where that amendment would fall in terms of support on this council, but I'll move. No, I won't move that. Yeah. So I'm not going to refer it. I'm going to leave my comments as they are. So, thank you.
Okay. Councillor Kunst?
Yeah, I can't support are we talking about the amendment? Had that one passed, right?
Amendment's done. We're back to
Okay,
the main
yeah,
motion.
okay, so
As amended. Yeah.
Okay, so as amended, I'm a sitting councillor, incumbent, and no one would be happier than my husband to not have to put up another sign. He was my sign guy, and I know it's a ton of work. But I just think, to be fair to new people that want to run, they want to have some hope that they can get their name out there. Otherwise, why would they go up against a machine that, you know, may be well run and well oiled? And signs have always just been a way for people to introduce themselves. And we have a couple of weeks. I mean, we narrowed it down to, I think it's like 2 to 3 weeks now where signs are up on properties. So for me, I can't support it just because I just don't think it's fair. So those are my comments.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Bailey?
Yeah, I brought this forward because, one, to be truthful, incumbents in any election have an advantage, okay? And there's an old saying when you deal with sign campaigns, and that's signs don't vote. And when you look at not just clutter or anything, I'm looking also at the waste. I'm looking at, if you see the campaign expenses of the two slates versus the incumbents, they were able to gather an awful lot more money and to be able to put an awful lot more signs out there than the independents were. So this is a way of leveling the playing field to some extent. And also, it's just a damn waste. Okay, when you look at the plastic, the time, the wood, the bylaw officers for 1 month babysit this election. All they do is they run around and people are reporting signage, misplacement and all that kind of stuff. And everyone's running around wasting time and effort when they could be doing it. And I agree with the presenter and the fact of greater participation in getting people's names out there. That's what elections should be about. But I'll tell you, it's not just signs. And I have worked and organized well over a dozen sign campaigns over my 50 some odd years of political involvement, and I despise signs. They're a waste of time, money, effort, and environmentally, they just, I gotta censor myself here. I brought this forward not to pull any kind of political BS against anyone. I brought this forward in a spirit of actually leveling the playing field for independents, so they can compete with organizations that can generate an awful lot more money. If you look at how many signs are out there, and when you're going down the road, okay, and there's 50 signs, people get lost in that. Okay, you're sitting there, and when you've got one person has one sign in there, and then you've got a team of signs, and that sign. I realize this isn't perfect, and I really hear tweaking this bylaw, but I just really despise all the waste, the time and effort and money that go into these sign campaigns.
Councillor Ferguson?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm glad to hear that Councillor Bagley is going to censor himself, so thank you. I did want to comment on the fact that a lot's being said. I don't want to repeat. You know, it's the word that if, I think there is a benefit to the community. I call it, there'll be less signs out there. And I think that the large groups, whomever they were, weren't around when we discussed it last term, in midterm. And we weren't able to reduce the number of signs or even the area of a certain sign. So it just remained the same. And that was very unfortunate because you end up having sign pollution. And it doesn't matter what happens, there's a safety part to all this. Sometime, and it's not everybody, there's some folks, they're volunteers and they're well-meaning. They end up placing the signs in an area that blocks view, blocks corners. We have a lot of corners, we have a lot of roads in the community, and that causes a safety situation. So, you know, I think this is a big step. We're not the only community doing this. I appreciate the comments of the delegation earlier on speaking. And I think it is the right thing to do, and it's the right time to do it. And I just call it sign pollution and safety concerns. Thank you.
Councillor Van Popta?
Yeah, as somebody who ran in 2011 with a modest, very small budget, and then running as a part of a team 11 years later, the experience with signage wasn't, you know, it was tough. So in 2011, I mean, I understand the exposure, but I don't find that really signage in 2011 was my impeding factor of not winning a seat. I look at my colleague here, Councillor Pratt, and what truly wins an election is the ground game. It's how much you're out there talking to people and knocking on doors and getting out to different events and meeting your constituents. And signage has very little to play. And I think if we could reduce the amount of garbage that we're creating for something that has very little impact on the outside anyways, I think that we're not necessarily creating a situation that is favoring a team. This is the first year that a team's been in since the 90s. So I don't think it's necessarily going to benefit anybody.
Councillor Pratt?
We're here to debate and discuss, and so in the spirit of that, I respect my colleague down the way tremendously, and so I'm going to have to respectfully disagree in that I think the reality is, as an independent, I didn't have 5 or 6 or 7 other candidates directly running with me to pool our networks together to determine where and how and with whom we're going to be placing signs. So I do think this actually is to the benefit of a greater organization. And we can discuss the merits of signs on actually winning elections or not. I think it is the principle of it in the fact that we are saying that those with private property now have more of a right to express themselves than those who don't. That to me is what this comes down to. And that's why I'm having such a tough time with it, because other than this, I look at this as a procedural change and I would have no second thoughts. But to me, that it becomes an issue about we're saying to those people who don't own property, who don't have the deep networks, and I can think of a couple people in the last election who maybe chose to run at the last minute, who don't have a deep network in this community, but they still ran, they still had some ideas they wanted to put forward, and without having the notice in public of them as a candidate that came from a publicly displayable sign, I just think that on principle isn't what I want to support. So I will move a referral when it's the time, Your Worship, if there's no other speakers.
Well, there's one other, but spoken already. You can go ahead and
okay, so
take your referral.
I'll move a referral to work on this with staff to select or identify any number of public sites with no more than 5 for signs to be publicly erected. That wording is terrible, and I apologize, but yeah, refer this back to staff to work with council on identifying sites that would be acceptable with signs being posted publicly.
So I just want to think, I'm not sure what you're seconding. So why don't we try to figure it out, like if you can maybe formulate it into a motion and have the clerk read it back, because there was quite a bit in there. I just want to make sure clear what the motion is. 5 this, 5.
So I'm going to take out a number. I'm not going to include a number. I would refer this back to staff to identify specific sites within the township that are on public right-of-way or public property where candidates would be allotted one sign
Okay.
to be posted publicly, so that at least we can say that on principle we're allowing people to.
Ms. Bauer, do you have a motion sort of, we can see if there's a seconder. There will be. I just want to confirm what the motion is.
As I understand it, the motion is that we locate specific locations in the townhouse, or the townhouse, in the township, where candidates can post one sign. There is no number of locations anymore in the referral. Just one sign is the only number there.
And I think the presumption is some location on public roadways, not public property. We don't end up in parks and all kinds of places. So I think your intent is public right-of-ways of some kind.
Yes, not
that
to
are large enough.
presuppose.
Not very many that can accommodate it, but I can think of a few. So is there a seconder to that referral? Seconded by Councillor, but I'll just give it to Councillor Kuntz. Councillor Kuntz jumped in. So seconded by Councillor Kuntz. Open up a secondary queue. Do you want to speak some more to it, Councillor Pratt?
I think my points come across.
Is there any other speakers to the referral? Okay, so, well, there you go. Go ahead, Councillor Kuntz.
Yeah, no, I think I would love to explore that, because I think going into the next election, I think it gives an opportunity for people who, we could limit the number of signs, but I would, like to explore that idea. So I think signs do matter. I mean, nobody had more signs than the contract with Langley, and we saw them everywhere, and they kept popping up more and more and more and more.
I think the other slate.
I had some good signs too, because you know what? Signs matter. They really do matter. I know I probably got elected on my first sign, so it really helps. So I'm here to advocate for it's not just social media, ground game definitely, but for people, they want to get their name out there. Their name is on the ballot, so it helps when people see their name. So I just, I would like to explore that. So hopefully council will support that motion.
Councillor Bailey.
Yeah, I'll support this referral. I want to get this right, okay? And that's the intent of that. And if we can make some amendments to make this more fair and make the election better, yeah, definitely I'll support this.
So the referral, Ms. Bauer, can you read it back again?
That the referral be amended, or that the bylaw.
Referred back to staff to.
Locate public right-of-ways in which one sign per candidate can be erected.
So the challenge, okay, so an unknown number, staff are going to think about it. So that's my challenge with it, is it feels, and there's nothing wrong with that. It feels like it's kind of being done a little bit on the, I hate that because that was done to me last term, meeting after meeting on the fly. Not there's anything wrong with that, but the concern is what happens with that referral is then staff are going to do what? They're going to bring up a map and try to come up with a plan to allow for location of signs on public property. Is that, like, what process would staff go through to even respond to the request?
I believe you're probably pretty close to what we do. We would have to locate locations in a township that would be large enough to account for the number of signs, keeping in mind that we average somewhere around 30 to 40 candidates between the three positions. That will limit us in some respects because, I mean, we can put them down a right-of-way, but if it's a power right-of-way, nobody's going to see them. So it will make it difficult, but not impossible, of course. We could definitely look for that.
So Councillor Bailey, I'm going to struggle. So what we could do, I've got a couple more speakers. Maybe I'll think about it for a moment. Go ahead, Councillor Van Popta.
Yeah, I don't know if we want to be a little bit more prescriptive and just say one per community, one area per community that could possibly accommodate, just so that we're spreading it out, or up to one per community, so that if, if Fort Langley can accommodate 40 signs somewhere, that it's eliminated, but at least try and space them out so they're not all in one area. I don't know if that's something that anybody wants to explore.
Councillor Kunst.
Maybe it's just streets. So we just take a few streets where we go, okay, so it's Fraser Highway and maybe another cross street. These are the two streets. People can, have 50 signs on those two streets, and they go 200th Street all the way from the border to 200th Street or whatever, the 96th Avenue. That way it's simple for bylaws, and if they want to start counting signs or whatever, but I just feel like that's at least an opportunity for people to get their name out there, but maybe that's too simple.
So I'm going to probably try to be the fly in the. I think it's a lot more complicated than it seems. Like, it's sure great, create some spaces or find some spaces where we can put up 50 signs. Because don't forget, we have school trustee candidates as well. So we're going to put up 50 signs. We're going to find spots to find room for 50 signs. Are they going to be 4x4 signs? So then again, so I think that when you go down this road, it's going to lead to other questions. So I think it's going to be very challenging to do that with a referral motion, that we don't have staff wasting time on something that won't be accepted. So as much as I hate to suggest it, Ms. Bauer, can we refer a referral? So can I make a motion to refer this to Council Priorities Committee with a referral? Do we have to defeat the referral and make a subsequent referral?
At this point, you need to defeat that referral. We have to close the one before we can open another.
So I'm going to suggest that we all in agreement, we defeat the referral and then refer it to Council Priorities Committee for a more lengthy discussion where all these ideas can be put on the table, staff can do some prep work. That is where they go to die, but that was one of my one-liners from last term. But this one here has no urgency. From what I understand, there won't be another election until at least the fall, depending on who you talk to. And I'll convene the CPC relatively soon. It would be the only item on the CPC agenda, I understand, Ms. Powers. So this wouldn't be what happened last term where it goes there to die because it sits on the agenda for a year and a half. I'll bring it forward much sooner than that. It feels to me like maybe that is an appropriate forum, and staff can maybe bring forward some ideas of how this would work rather than trying to find spots in the township where we're going to put 50 signs. So I'm going to call the question on the referral. I think I'm just going to ask that we defeat the referral, knowing that it's going to CPC. I'll make that referral right after this. You've spoken twice, I'm losing track here. Yeah, so I'll convene it on a council Monday within the next couple of meetings. That, Ms. Bauer, that would be fine. Yeah, so I'll convene it either April 17th or May 2nd. You promise? I do promise. Pinky swear. Okay. So I'm going to call the question on the referral and ask that we vote this down with the understanding that I'll make a referral to CPC. So that referral fails with Councillor Bailey, Councillor Rent, Mayor Woodward, Councillor Martins, Councillor Van Popta, Councillor Pratt, and Councillor Ferguson opposed. And now I will move a referral to CPC. Is there a seconder to that? Seconded by Councillor Martins. Is there any discussion on the referral to CPC? Seeing none, I'll call the question on that referral. And that carries, that referral to CPC carries unanimously. Ms. Bauer, I'll just briefly talk to you after this meeting and we'll pick a date for that. Okay? So moving on to the public hearing, Mr. Richardson, item D1.
Thank you, Worship. The subject Willoughby Community Plan and Latimer Neighborhood Plan amendments and rezoning applications pertaining to a proposed mixed-use development consisting of 289 apartment units and 20,914 square feet of commercial space at 20069 80th Avenue. The 2.59 acre site is designated commercial and neighborhood commercial in the Willoughby Community Plan and mixed-use apartment and mixed use in the Latimer neighborhood plan. This air photo depicts a site located on the northwest corner of 80th Avenue and 201st Street. Proposed Willoughby Community Plan and Latimer Neighborhood Plan Amendment Bylaw 5849 designates the easterly portion of the site commercial in the Willoughby Community Plan and mixed use in the Latimer Neighborhood Plan. Proposed rezoning bylaw 5850 amends the existing suburban residential 2 zoning to comprehensive development zone 180 at a floor space ratio of 3.1 to accommodate the proposal. This slide indicates the proposed site plan with vehicular access proposed from 80A Avenue. The next series of slides are renderings, elevations, and landscape plan is indicated in development permit 101190. Staff recommends support of Willoughby Community Plan and Latimer Neighborhood Plan Amendment Bylaw 5849 and rezoning bylaw 5850, subject to 10 conditions listed on page 9 of council's agenda. Your worship, a total of 225 notices were mailed out, 8 written submissions have been received, and there's 1 individual noted on the speakers list, a Ryan Mann, your worship.
Okay, great. Ryan Mann, please come forward. Just turn your mic on. There you go.
Afternoon, Mayor and Council. I'm actually probably the only person for this out of my group. We're all part of the Verge Townhouse Complex located at 2015 81 Avenue. A couple things I have questions about is, has a shade study been done to see if there's any impact to the neighboring townhouse complex? And is there any additional traffic calming measures in place? I noticed that the property to the north is not under development, and if we widen the road on 201 at the site, the road widening will not be done on the north side, and I know we already have a lot of traffic due to LEC. That's all I got to say.
Yeah, I just have one clarification. Can you clarify again where you live in relation to this map?
20150.
0150, not 15. Okay,
Yeah.
all right, 20150. Okay, thank you. Are there any other submissions from the public on item D1? Please come forward.
Good evening, everyone. I'm representing the 2 properties to the west of the subject site, 20053 and 20011 80th. I feel this project will negatively impact our development. 2 years ago, we were in the process of rezoning, at which point we acquired 20011, which made our plan not useful. The property at 20011 has a landmark status, 3 to 12 stories. And speaking with the planner at the township here, I was advised that I should do a land assembly instead of just developing our family property of 35 years at 20053. So I'm in the process of presenting a proposal for a landmark plan for both sites combined. And I would like to make sure that it does not affect any sort of density that I will be proposing because all the juice has been given out next door. That's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you.
Excuse me? I'm sorry, can we get your name, please?
My name is Steve Sekon, Sekhon.
And I have another clarification.
Yes, sir.
You own 20053.
Yes, that's our family residence of 35 years.
Do you own the 20011?
Yes, sir.
You do, so you own both.
Family owns 20053.
Yeah.
I own 20011, the one with the landmark status.
And I would love it if you would make an appointment with my office and come and visit with me.
I definitely would. I'd love to put a spectacular project here right in front of the Langley Event Center. We've paid our taxes for 35 years. We held this property. I would like it to be a legacy for my father, who had passed many years ago, who had a dream of doing this here. So I would really like to present something.
It's outside the scope of the public hearing, but just my one opportunity to ask you to come and do that.
Yes, sir, definitely.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You have a clarification? Go ahead, Councillor Van Popta.
Yeah, sorry, could you just reiterate what you think, why densification on this site impacts your?
So we also had a similar property in Langley. We had rezoned the property, and another developer had beat us to the punch. They were in more of a hurry. They had to put an amendment in to rezone the site for higher density. At which point, when we were ready for rezoning, we were told we would have to amend the plan and get a reduction in density because the site across the street had went from a subdivision to a multifamily townhouse site. At which point, we suffered a loss in wider road. There was a road that was not required that was pushed through to support that development. So in the plan that was presented by the Sarkozy, in the layout, I see a road coming north and south. It shows on the plan that it's going to turn east. But my ultimate concern is giving them having a change to the plan may give them that increase, and I would have to support that density on my side. So I'm not asking to amend the plan. I'm just working with what the plan we have been working with. So for someone to come in and amend the plan, second, third order in 4 years, I mean, I just feel it's unjust. I want to put up something very nice here.
Have you been watching council meetings for the last couple?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
Just again, clarification on the submission. Unfortunately, the public hearing structure. Councillor Pratt.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate that.
clarification.
My question would be if you've taken a look at the 200 Street 2040 terms of reference that were referred today.
Yes, sir.
Because if you haven't, I would definitely recommend taking a look at those, and you might get a better idea of what the vision is.
Right.
Okay, that's, thank you very much for
Thank
your
you.
submission, yeah. With that, any other submissions from the public on item D1? Please come forward. And I should be more diligent, as the clerk identified, and you can state your name and location. You don't have to give us your address. but your
Absolutely,
name
yeah.
and location.
My name's Chris Larson. I'm at 20150, much like Ryan there. My question isn't in regards to the property itself, but the neighboring in between our property and that. That's being tried to be rezoned multiple times from townhouses to now low rise. My concern is if they allow low rises there with business or not, it might go on that slim property line there too. And having, something higher than our townhouses property, litter, density, traffic, it's all going to be affected. I'm not necessarily against this, but when the density builds up, those roadways back there, already we don't have any traffic control from there. We have, whenever there's a game going on across the street, the whole thing gets crowded. There's police there almost every week just doing traffic management. With having more construction there, it's just going to get even worse. I'm not concerned about this per se, but where the growth is going and how is it going to be managed further. Like, to come in and see something else happen, I feel like there needs to be more parameters on what's being built or a bigger scope. It's just, you don't really know what's happening. When one thing goes, it may all go.
Great, thank you. Is there any other submissions from the public on item D1? For a second time, is there any other submissions from the public on D1? And for a third time, are there any other submissions from the public on D1? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing on item D1. If there's an explanation by the proponent, not seeing that, so we'll move on. We'll close the public hearing for D1. Is there any other motion to consider third reading on this? So moved. Moved by Councillor Pratt. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Van Popta, so there's no discussion on that. So call the question on whether we'll consider third reading. That carries unanimously, so we'll get a motion. Is there a motion to consider third reading? Moved by no, don't put your hand up. Moved by Councillor Pratt. Is there a seconder to third reading? Seconded by Councillor Van Popta. Is there any discussion? Councillor Pratt, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it, and I appreciate the concerns that the community's brought up, and I think that there definitely is a conversation to be had about the wider plan for this area, and I think that will hopefully come out in the terms of reference when we get them back for 200 Street 2040. This area will be included in that, and I think it's the opportunity now to come up with the long-term vision that we're going to see along the corridor. So this application specifically, I think, is trending in the right direction for me personally as to what I want to see in this area. For me, 200th Street is the beating urban heart of the township, and we have a chance to get it right and create something special. And I think this type of application is what's going to slowly get us there. So I'll be supporting it today.
Thank you. So I'm going to have a couple other comments, but I'm going to move an amendment first. I'm going to worked on this earlier. And I have a written copy for you, Ms. Barr. I'll provide after the meeting. But I'm going to move an amendment that condition number 9 of third reading, which is not in the agenda, it's in the staff report, be amended. That is the clause regarding compliance with various amenity policies. That condition number 9 be amended to include as per a 6-story interpretation after compliance with the requirements of the community amenity contributions policy. I so move. Is there a seconder to that? Seconded by Councillor Van Popta. Is there any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, I'll call to question on the amendment. That carries unanimously. So moving back to the main motion as amended. Mr. Richardson, can you bring up the site plan that would show the connectivity? You have a site plan, I believe, that would show the half road or the temporary road. So, yeah, this one there. Can you explain a little bit for me, just through you to directly to you, regarding what the long-term plan here would be for how this would potentially interface to the townhouse application to the east, and how the roads might be in the interim until the property to the north is developed?
Thank you, Worship. So as indicated here, I'll use my cursor. Subject site is here. 201 Street is here. That's partially built now. The subject property would provide all the upgrades, including the greenway along 80th Avenue, provide for the western half of this road, and the southern half for a functioning road along 80th Avenue, which provides parkade access to the site at this location here.
What about the application submitted 0230?
This 0230. Your Worship, this one's currently under construction here along 200 Street. This currently has been granted 4th reading by council and has a development permit issued. There's a application submitted to change this from the current approved townhouses, because the plan has some language in it allowing for higher forms of use at this location here.
So one option for council when that comes forward, or either I could do it preemptively like we did with some of the other ones earlier last year, they could simply be asked, or their application could not be approved and they would proceed with townhouse development versus an apartment development. That would be an option.
Correct, Your Worship. As council would, council has the opportunity to adjudicate on each individual application as they come forward.
Yeah.
As you mentioned, with respect to the delegate with the 2 subject properties here, Your Worship.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I'm also generally supportive. So I understand the concerns of 80th Avenue and half roads and traffic and managing and having different parameters of growth. And one of the areas here is these half-built mini sub-neighborhoods within these neighborhood plans. The only way we're going to get out of it, in my opinion, is to finish them. We come back to the same challenge that was raised last year and has been raised by myself as a councillor for many years. We allowed development all over Willoughby at the same time. That was a policy decision that has resulted in some of these infrastructure and road challenges that we have today. And the easiest and quickest way out of it that's affordable and manageable financially is to finish, especially development along these arterial roads. And this is probably the minimum density I'd like to see within this close proximity to 200 Street. We are pursuing a transit-oriented corridor there, and we have a number of developments that occurred in the past that were far too low in density, single-family developments adjacent to 200 Street, and there's some catch-up to do. For residents that live in the neighborhood, I ran on it. I understand and feel the issue around road infrastructure and growth, and how are we better doing that, and what amenities are going to come with that. And in this situation, this is an application that complies with the plan, other than a small OCP amendment for some additional density, and will help us finish the 80th Avenue corridor, and especially 201 Street. So I support it, and I support the amendment and belongs to the interpretation of the community amenity contribution policy to get that fair deal from development that this council is pursuing. So with that, I'll call the question on D1. That carries unanimously. So with that, I'll call for termination. Moved by Councillor Martin, seconded by Councillor Pratt. In favor of termination. Public hearing is closed.